Yes, we are continuing our studies in how to have victory over the self-centered life. Satan is not our greatest problem. Our greatest problem is from within our own heart that opens the door for him to get in and control us. So we have a choice to make by God's grace to yield to the Lord, or if we don't, the enemy is going to overpower us and control us. So in our last class, where it states that this is God's people now, not unbelievers. They cease not from their own doings, nor from their own stubborn way. So we see that stubbornness, rebellion, self-will are the real problems in man, not Satan so much. These are the real heart problems that allow Satan to get in and take advantage of us. You know, even the Apostle Paul and Barnabas had an argument one time, and they had a sharp disagreement. And there needed to be a little bit more yieldedness in their own lives, and it separated them. Now, these were good men. So Barnabas allowed his heart to become offended, and he left Paul and went his own way and went in another direction. And never mind rebuking Satan here. The problem is our own heart. We need humility, and we cannot be super sensitive. We need to be very gracious. Well, let's consider again other problems that invite the enemy into our life. Another thing is this: people often are unwilling to admit their weakness or their problem, and they deny their problem. And the Apostle Paul is bringing this out in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 25 and 26. And he talks about recovering ourselves from the snare of the devil. How? How do we recover ourselves from the snare of the devil? By acknowledging the truth. And sometimes people are unwilling to admit their faults because of pride. And we will never be free from Satan's power unless we humble ourselves and admit our fault, our sin. And Satan continues to control them. Many people remain bound in their problems because they will never really admit that the problem is me or it's my fault. Bad attitudes, bitterness, defiance, disobedience, hardness, and so forth. So, in order for there to be freedom from Satan's power, first, there needs to be an honest confession. I'm wrong, Lord, and this is a fault in my life. This is a weakness. We need this. In 1 Kings chapter 11, we find that later in life, King Solomon had turned from the Lord. This is amazing to me. That this man who wrote the Proverbs, 3,000 Proverbs, that visibly was visited by the Lord and given such honor and wisdom, that later he turned away from the Lord and he was with all these other women and all these and silver and gold and rare treasures, and his heart was just in so many other places. So what did the Lord do to get his attention? The Lord raised up an enemy to get his attention. But what did Solomon do? Instead of recognizing, oh, God is trying to get my attention, he fights the enemy and never confesses his sin. So this is the problem with the human heart. So we must, never mind the devil, we must face the real problems in our life. Now here's a beautiful passage. Well, I wouldn't say beautiful, but it's quite a meaningful verse in Ecclesiastes 8 verse 10. And actually I think we've already quoted this. But Ecclesiastes 8 verse 10, it says, "Whoever breaks down a hedge, a serpent shall bite him." Now, serpents represent evil spirits. When we first accept Jesus, the Lord puts a wall of salvation around us, like it says in Isaiah chapter 60, the walls of salvation. Isaiah 60 and verse 18, the wall of salvation to protect us. And an obedient life maintains this wall of protection around us. But disobedience breaks down this wall, and evil spirits get into the heart when we don't live right. You know that when someone is on drugs, when someone is drinking alcohol and drunk, that many evil spirits get into them when they're intoxicated or on drugs. And this is breaking down the wall of salvation, the wall of protection, by living wrong. So we must maintain this hedge of protection that God puts around us. Now, the Lord had a hedge around Job, but it was the Lord himself who removed the hedge for Job to be tested. That was a different situation. But disobedience breaks down the hedge of protection. And this is also brought out in Proverbs 25, verse 28, that slothfulness breaks down the hedge. Unforgiveness is another major reason Satan gets an advantage over us. This is what Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 10 and 11. He said to the Corinthians, "If you do not forgive, Satan will gain an advantage over you." If you do not forgive, Satan will gain an advantage over you. Satan is very bitter and unforgiving, and if we act like him, we have no authority over him. In fact, it invites him to control us. So, there was someone in the Corinthian church that hadn't been living right, but many of the people would not forgive him. And Paul warned them, listen, this person has repented, accept him back. But they said no. And Paul warns, if you don't forgive, you're going to give Satan an advantage over you. Wow. Another story I heard years ago, there was a very nice woman who, in her lifetime, led over 500 people to Jesus. She was a witness for Christ. She talked to her family. She talked to her friends, probably people at work. And they said in her lifetime, she led over 500 people to Jesus. Isn't that wonderful? But you know what happened later in life? Her husband was not quite as consecrated as she was, and he fell into adultery. And he was very, very sorry and very repentant, and he came and he begged her forgiveness. And she said, "I will not forgive you." And she held bitterness and hatred in her heart. And this went on for years. And this is what she did when she was dying. She was cursing God when she died. Oh, listen. Jesus said, if you will not forgive men their trespasses, your Father in heaven will not forgive you your trespasses. Here was a husband who was deeply repentant And she hardened her heart and closed her heart. And she was angry with God. God, I've served you. Why did you not protect my husband? Why did you allow this? But listen, unforgiveness invites Satan to get into us because he's hard and bitter and unforgiving. And when we are that way, it invites him to come in. So we must forgive, or God cannot forgive us. Love for the world invites Satan into the heart. We have a very sad verse in 2 Timothy 4, verse 10, where Paul declares, Demas hath forsaken me because he loves this present world. Now, Demas was a fellow minister. They worked together. And Demas heard great teaching and had a good example and saw great miracles. But there was something else that he loved in his heart. He loved the things of the world, maybe the praise of men, whatever it was. And he left Paul. Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world. Let's remember 2 Timothy 4, verse 10. The problem is not the devil as much as our own heart. Where is your heart? Where is our affection? We are to set our affection on things above, not on things on the earth. If we have wrong affections, it's going to allow evil to come in. Now let me speak briefly about a major problem in the church today. I heard a survey a little while ago that said over 60% of Christian men look at pornography on the internet. 60% of Christian men look at pornography. Do you know what that does? When you look at lustful thoughts, it gets into your mind, into your heart, and it becomes an act. Much adultery begins with the eyes, with the thoughts, with the affection. And when you feed this constantly, literally evil spirits get into you through your eyes, through your ears. And we must close the door to Satan. It's important what we look at. It's important what we listen to. It's important what we love, because it opens the door for evil spirits to come in. In Job 31 and verse 1, Job made it clear that he kept his eyes where they belonged. He said, why should I think upon a maid? And he kept his eyes away from gazing upon women and lusting after them. You see, that's an act of the will. We must refuse to look at evil and to desire evil and to listen to evil. We must not do that because it invites Satan to come in. The real problem is not the devil. The problem is our own heart. So Job made it a habit of keeping his eyes where they belonged. Amen. In Numbers 33, verse 51 and 52, when Israel crossed over Jordan and went into the land of inheritance, the land of promise, they were commanded to destroy all evil pictures. Pictures have an evil spirit in them, some of them. And so we must not look at wrong pictures. If you look at pornography, you're going to get a lustful spirit into you. But they were to destroy all evil pictures. Numbers 33, verse 51 and 52. Pornography. That is evil pictures, which open the door for Satan to come in. So we cannot play with sin. We cannot be in the wrong places with the wrong people, or you will fall into sin. So we have to be careful where we are and who we are with. Now let's consider the story in Genesis chapter 27. It's the story of Rebekah and her son Jacob. Esau he probably had cataracts at this time in his life. He couldn't see very well. And he wanted to pass on his blessing to his firstborn son, to Esau. Well, God didn't want that. It was to go to Jacob. The elder shall serve the younger. But anyway, Rebekah called her son Jacob, and said to him, I want you to go and lie to your father and tell him that you are Esau. So here is Rebekah teaching her son, Jacob, to lie, to deceive. And Jacob said, well, listen, I'm smooth, but Esau is hairy. And when father touches me with his blind eyes, when he touches me, he'll know that I am Jacob and not Esau. So she made clothes to put on his neck and to make him feel furry like that. But my point is this. Don't blame Satan for what happened here. This was deceit in the heart of Rebekah, teaching her son to lie to his father. And where did Rebekah get this deceitful nature? Do you remember that she had a brother named Laban? And he was a very deceitful man. And it ran in that whole family. So listen, we need to have these sins broken in our life. Where did Jacob get his deceitful nature from? He got it from his mother. Isaac, his father, was not deceitful, but it was the mother who manipulated and taught him to lie and deceive. Don't blame the devil here. We can't cast out the devil. The problem was her heart. She had a deceitful heart, like her brother Laban. And Laban was a terribly deceitful man, changing Jacob's wages 10 times and lying and deceiving and manipulating. So remember, the real problem is not the devil as much as our own heart that invites him to come in. Imaginations. Now here is another problem with thoughts. In 2 Corinthians 10, verse 3 through 5, it says, cast down imaginations and bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. The devil can get into us with discouragement by giving us thoughts and imaginations, and we have to rebuke them and not receive them. Imaginations are a real problem. Wrong confession or right confession. We are told in Revelation chapter 12, verse 11, that we overcome Satan by the word of our testimony, what we say, especially when we're in pain. What did Job say when he lost everything? He lost his family, he lost his business, all in one day. And then his wife is hysterical. And what does he do? He falls down and worships. And in effect, he is saying, God is good all the time. God gave me these things. God's taken them away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job overcame Satan by the word of his testimony. Satan had said to God, if you remove all his blessings, he'll curse you, he'll hate you, he'll turn against you. And God said, all right, let's see. And he allowed Satan in one day to remove all of Job's blessings. And here is the right response. He falls down and worships and gives God thanks. But you know what? Many people, when bad things, difficult things happen, they turn against God. And they have a wrong confession. And this allows the enemy to control them and get into them. We must not harden our heart. We must cry out for grace in time of need. And please remember Hebrews 10:36. Remember Hebrews 10:36. We are to come boldly to the throne of grace to find help in time of need. So when we're hurt, when we're devastated, when very cruel, unfair things happen to us, we need to fall down and thank God and worship Him and receive grace, much grace, in time of need. Right response. But when we have a wrong response, when we harden our heart, when we accuse God of being unfair, why did you allow this to happen? You see, that allows the enemy to come in. This is the reason Israel never made it into the land of promise. Numbers chapter 14. Israelites constantly complained and murmured and were angry and bitter, and they hardened their hearts. And God finally changed his mind and said, all right, you will not go into the land of inheritance. Wrong confession. We have victory over Satan with a right confession. We overcome Satan by the word of our testimony. Jesus was tempted by the devil. And Satan came to Jesus after he was baptized in the Jordan and said, and he showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And he said, I'll give all of this to you if you'll just fall down and worship me. But Jesus knew in his heart that he was the heir of all things. God had already promised him everything anyway. But as a man, he was being tempted to do things Satan's way. Satan says to people, listen, if you'll do things my way, I'll give you a great name, I'll give you money, I'll give you popularity. And there are ministers who take that and do things Satan's way. They have worldly rock music. They have a false message of prosperity, a false grace message. And their churches are filled with people who don't want to pay any price to be a real Christian. And they look successful, but Satan literally was offering a shortcut into the Lord's inheritance, and the Lord said, no. Jump off this building and show yourself that you're the Lord. No, he wouldn't do it. Satan wants to steal our inheritance by offering us a shortcut, by doing things his way. Now, the Apostle Paul is going to tell us what it's going to be like in our times. This was 2,000 years ago. And he said, in the last days, dangerous times will come. And here's the reason. Because men will be lovers of their own selves, lovers of pleasure instead of lovers of God. And so here is the real problem of the human heart. The lover of self. Men shall be lovers of their own selves, proud, boasters, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, lovers of self, just trying to exalt me. This is the spirit that's in the world in these last days. And Jesus said, like it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the times of the coming of the Son of Man. And so we see that the world is becoming very dangerous, but here's the root of it: the exaltation of me, lovers of self instead of lovers of God. Men shall be lovers of themselves. There was a popular song in America a few years ago, I Did It My Way. Well, listen, I think that's the #1 song in hell. I did it my way. You know something? When you do it God's way, you're going to be in heaven, and you're going to have a wonderful eternity. But when you do it your way, when we do it our way, we are going to destroy ourselves. A lover of self pushes God off the throne and sits on the throne and runs his own life. No. I do what I want to do. I go where I want to go. No one tells me what to do. I am Lord of my life. I did it my way. So, listen to the sins mentioned in 2 Timothy 3, verses 2 to 5. And this all grows out of this wretched love for self. Men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, unthankful, unholy, disobedient to parents, traitors. All of this is because of a depraved, selfish, self-centered nature. And do you know who the greatest lover of all is? It's the coming Antichrist, who wants to take over God's temple and God's position and show himself that he is God. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, we are told in verse 3 and 4 that before Jesus comes, let no man deceive you, Antichrist must first come. And he is going to sit in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. In other words, this man wants worship. He wants all attention drawn to himself. Here is the greatest lover of self. And you know who's living in him? Is Satan, the one who wanted to steal God's position and have all glory and worship directed to himself. But this is the spirit of Satan and the prince of this world and the thinking of this world. It's to glorify me. So listen, let's love the truth. The people who follow the Antichrist are those who love a lie and who love something spectacular, but they don't love the truth. Men who love darkness rather than light. So let's love the truth and be held from being deceived in these times. Love the truth. Amen. God bless you.